welcome back to Medicine for These Times. I am so honored to have William Padilla-Brown with us. Hi, William. Thanks for
What's
being here.
up? What's up? My pleasure.
Coming to us from a very warm winter in Pennsylvania. Very interesting times that we're in.
Yeah.
So, William is a multidisciplinary citizen scientist practicing social science, mycology, psychology, molecular biology, and adaptive manufacturing. William founded and is the current CEO of MycoSymbiotics, a permaculture research and production business based in central Pennsylvania, focused on innovative, practical, applied biological science. William, I've checked out your work for a while. I've been following you for a while. It's just really incredible what you've been building and the work you're putting out there in the world and having your hands in so many areas. But, there's a lot of newer entrepreneurs listening to or watching this podcast. I would love to hear, what's your story? How did you get into this? Were you always on track to, work with mushrooms and plants, or were you, on a different track for a while? I'd love to hear this.
Right on. And just to clarify some things, I don't practice psychology or study psychology. I study phycology. That's the study
Oh,
of
phycology.
allergy.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah. No stress, no stress.
My eyes.
Um, yeah. And additive manufacturing for
Yes.
anybody that's interested for 3D printing and CNC, things like this. So yeah, my
Nice.
story has been all over the place, and just I've recently come across the term third culture kid, and I've been utilizing that because it helps me to make the explanation of my childhood a little bit more concise. But yeah, my family, traveled a lot. My father traveled independently, working for the U.S. Army in the U.S., and my mother traveled internationally, working foreign affairs for the Department of Agriculture. And because of that, I was exposed to many different cultures. I mean, even people living in the U.S. know that, like, people in New York, they talk a little bit different. They talk a little bit faster. They talk with a little bit more punch at the end of their, at the end of the conversation, especially closer you get to the city. Um, and then, like, more rural you get, people talk a little bit slower, and it's like a little more draw, and like there's like a whole, and like beyond just the way people talk, like the culture, the things people do, how they spend their time, what they eat, all these kinds of things. So traveling so much put me in a unique position to be able to test out a lot of different modalities of life, experiment with a lot of different cultures, pick and choose what I liked from what, and really, um, you know, find myself in the mix of the experiences. So yeah, I grew up a lot, mostly on the East Coast. Lived in London, Mexico City, Taiwan, or Taipei, Taiwan, and um, landed here in Pennsylvania. My father retired from the military here in Pennsylvania when I was still in middle school. So I established a lot of core relationships as a young person, as a teenager here, which kept me here, including the relationship with the mother of my children. We started our relationship when we were like 15 years old. Um, so yeah, so without getting into too much detail, I dropped out of high school when I was 16. I was living in Taipei, Taiwan, um, with my mom. They were trying to keep me away from cannabis by putting me in a country that didn't really have any around. Because I started getting interested in cannabis with my father being in the army and my mother working for the government. It was like very bizarre. I also like grew up like in the Catholic Church with my mom, and we're very academic. So when I started my relationship with cannabis, I was very like vocal around the fact that I wanted to create a career in it, which was like bizarre beyond the fact that like I was using it. It was like bizarre that I was just like, no, this is my life now. Like I was like studying the plan. I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. So yeah. So my parents tried with their last little bit of parental control over me before I became autonomous entirely. To place me over there with my mom in Taiwan, where I dropped out of school. Eventually got a plane ticket back to the U.S. and started my own life. Got an apartment. Got charged with possession with intent to manufacture marijuana in this county, York County, Pennsylvania, as a minor. So God bless, because if I was like a couple months older, my whole story would be different. Yeah, transitioned my knowledge of cannabis cultivation because that was really what brought me into the natural world. Before that, I grew up in cities. I grew up in the church. I grew up traveling so fast that I never had a moment to be in nature, which takes a little bit more. Like I never had a moment to be in the wild. I have a conflict with using nature. Like we're always in nature. Everything is nature. So like um, the I never had a moment to really be in the wild. I never had a moment to be in semi-wild, like for any long extent of time to actually experience it. It was always just like a blur of like the what was tangible to me was the human ideological realities that I had been submersed in for my whole life. And what I mean by that is like I was going to school. This was an idea of a person. I was living in a house. This is the idea of a person. I'm using the language, the idea of a person. I spent more time interacting with human ideology than wild reality, which I find more valuable at this point in my life. So yeah, I got myself a ticket back to Pennsylvania, reconnected with my mother of my children, which we had been talking online the whole time. And we got our, I got my first apartment, dealt with the whole probation thing. Um, it was a little bit difficult. Went back to live with my mom in Virginia for a little bit, took a job to finish off my last of my probation. And then whenever I would finish that, me and my girl got our first apartment together, lived there for a little bit, grew a bunch of weed, figured out how to make hash, um, did a bunch of DMT, tripped a bunch of L, ate a bunch of psychedelic mushrooms, figured out about cultivating mushrooms, and had our first kid. And then once my son was born, I just wanted to formalize something for him. So, because we didn't own anything, we didn't own any land. I wanted to create something. I know the realities of the world. Like any day, I could be gone. So I wanted to create something that would be able to last for my family, some kind of legacy. So I incorporated MycoSymbiotics in 2015, the year after my son was born, to create something for him off of the understanding of the mushroom trend. I had I've been posting on YouTube my whole life. During my psychedelic experiences, I didn't really care to be on the internet as much. But YouTube was always something that was very interesting to me. I could always go in there and like peer into different realities and like see people doing things, learn a lot of different things. And I noticed the trend on YouTube as I was posting and watching videos back in like 2012 that mushrooms were becoming popular. And I would post content. I was posting content on like vegan cooking and like uh, um, permaculture and rewilding, but only my mushroom videos got any attention. So um, I was like, all right, that's the trend. That's what the world is telling me. Literally, like it's like you can look at the universe in different ways, and I just like I said, it's always nature. So like the analytics on the internet is representative of something in the real world. So I was like, all right, this mushroom thing is gonna be real. So I just wanted to start pursuing that.
Wow, that's an incredible story. And I love how you just throw in like, oh, and then DMT and
Yeah, yeah. You just gotta keep it real. You know what I mean? Like I'm not
yeah,
gonna like
of
front
course.
like I had like a lot of teachers in the form of different organisms that taught me lessons, and I can't afford to go spend 10 years in a cave meditating or like 10 years in the wild like doing tai chi, finding my inner soul like we used to be able to do because I got to pay bills every month and I got kids. You know what I mean? So like that DMT
Yeah.
makes a lot of time and space for you for that little 10. You know what I'm saying? That LSD turns that 8 hours into, you know what I'm saying? Whatever you can figure out how to do with it once you know how to use the tools.
Yeah, and you know what I also loved about your story was the fact that, because my parents, of course, I remember when they found out I was doing acid in high school, it became this big commotion, and it was like, wait, what's the problem? But it's helping me, like it feels good, and I could be actually driving drunk. Instead, I'm hanging out with some friends tripping, which is worse. I mean, who's to say what's right or wrong? And now look. So I would love to hear a little bit about then when you established MycoSymbiotics. How did you then essentially start to monetize, this love for mushrooms and permaculture and plants and cannabis? What was your first kind of, let's say, product other than YouTubing?
Um, I still really haven't figured out how to make money off YouTube that much besides just like marketing stuff. But like, um, just because some of the stuff that we talk about like is like, I don't know, we have to figure out the best way to keep our content separated so some can be monetized or whatever. But um, when I started making any real money and what I was doing was when I started selling liquid cultures of mycelium. I would collect wild cultures of gourmet edible mushrooms. I would go just clone like commercial genetics that you get from the grocery store, and then I would keep cultures of them and I would sell it on Etsy. So like I had like used Etsy for other things, and I was like, oh, there's not many people selling, mushroom cultures or anything like that on here. So I was like, all right, let me just figure out how to market mushrooms on Etsy, and I became one of the best sellers on there. They gave me better SEO than I could have ever paid for because I became one of the only people that was like recognized doing that early on. So that was great. But yeah, so I started selling liquid cultures of mycelium for $10 for 10 cc's of a syringe with a culture to grow just regular mushrooms, like nothing even psychedelic, like just like oyster mushrooms, reishi, lion's mane, stuff like that I would find in the wild. When I started finding them in the wild is when it really started going good because like I was offering something that wasn't available. I was offering like Pennsylvania genetics of like edible gourmet mushrooms and things. So um, yeah, that's when it really started to kick, and then from there transitioned into production of fresh mushrooms. I got into doing local farmers markets, and then doing value added products like creating products with the mushrooms, extracts. I innovated a lot in extraction techniques because I was making hash before I got into making mushroom extracts. So I brought a lot of my hash making knowledge into the mushroom extract scene, which was really just a lot of like when I got into it, everybody was doing folk method, just pour alcohol on the mushroom, shake it up every day for a month, and then there's a tincture. And I'm like, that doesn't work for everything. And also, like, why did you leave the alcohol in there whenever not everybody wants that? So I started making concentrated mushroom extracts, and pretty early on, like right around the time I started making money, like selling fresh mushrooms and selling liquid cultures, I started making money teaching people things and doing public events and holding space for different experiences here in Pennsylvania than you could have. Like there was nobody, still to this day, there's nobody doing what we do out here. So yeah, so we really just started, holding space for people.
This is incredible. And I'm curious, have you been 100% self-taught? Like, did you go to some, science program or, like study under one of your teachers, or was this just like experimentation and following your heart?
So like I was already like growing mushrooms and everything when I took my first class on mushroom cultivation. But just like I said, I dropped out of high school, and like figuring out how to get even there was like a lot of just learning stuff on the internet. So like when I first learned how to grow mushrooms, I did it all mostly off of like Shroomery and Arrowwood because like it was just mad information on there about cultivating mushrooms. And then I bought this like little video series, this little, I don't know anybody that's like a real OG knows what I'm talking about, but there's the dude Roger Rabbit on Shroomery with the pink bunny with the big tits. He had this video series that was about how to cultivate mushrooms in your house, and like that was one of the first things that I was like using on how to grow mushrooms. So I watched that video, and then I grew my mushrooms, ate them. Didn't really need to grow any much more than the first batch I grew told me all the lessons I fucking never needed to learn. And then I was like, all right, well, I still know how to grow mushrooms, so I'm gonna translate this knowledge into other things. And it was right around the time when I incorporated my business that my parents were seeing that I was doing something that like made sense to them. So my one of my parents, like my dad, I think he bought me plane tickets, and then like my mom paid for the course or vice versa. But they paid for me to go take a 1 week class on mushroom cultivation with fungi for the people in Oregon. And then I took 1 week of myco remediation. So I did a week long mushroom cultivation, week long myco remediation. That was the only like formal training I ever had on this stuff. Really great class, and they're really good friends of mine. Jay Schindler runs that with his partner Val, and then I met one of these mushroom authors really earlier on also. So like when I dropped out of school and when I learned permaculture, I learned permaculture when I was like 18, 19. Permaculture is a design science where you design systems. So the first system I designed was called non-traditional independent education systems. So I could figure out a way that I could get a higher education without going to college. And I figured like there's a bunch of authors and experts that go around doing workshops and classes all around the US. Like I could just figure out how to get into their classes, and like that could be my higher education if I interact with it the right way, like if I actually engage with it the right way. So like um, I met this guy, Trad Cotter. Like I went to like one of the things I did, I joined the local mushroom club. And at the local mushroom club, they do monthly classes, and they did a class on cultivation. And the person that came in like didn't really know that much, and I knew more than them. And other people in the group were like, "Oh, you really know your stuff. Like you should connect with this guy." And they showed me Trad Cotter. Then I found out he was teaching at this Northern Organic Farming Association. It's called NOFA. They do like conferences in the Northeast. They had a conference in January in like 2016. And it was in New York. And I went online and I was like, can somebody help me to go take this class? Because I was just like serving tables and making tips, like, and we had a baby, so like I didn't have any money. Like I would be lucky if we made like $2,500 in a month. Like we had to like even use government aid on multiple occasions back then. But like, so like I went on the internet. I was like, hey, nobody where we live knows how to do the things that I can learn at this place. And if somebody helps me to go there, then I will teach everybody here for free what I learned. And everybody's like, why would we pay for you to have an experience and da 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 and blah blah blah. And this one person was like, that sounds like a good idea to me. And this one person bought my ticket, just bought me a ticket to go to the NOFA conference. And then my dad let me borrow his car because I didn't have a car. Like I never have a car until I was 22 or 23. Like, and I had a kid when I was 20. So like we had to figure out like what to do. Like, you know what I mean? It was wild. But my dad let me borrow his car, and then I couldn't even afford a hotel. And my girl's mom bought me a hotel for one of the nights. So I ended up in upstate New York in January, sleeping in a fucking Ford Explorer, trying to get after the knowledge. Like that's how hungry I was for it. But I met Trad Cotter there, and it was really interesting because like these conferences are usually in a hotel, so I was like staying in the hotel lobby as long as I could at night because it was cold as fuck, and I was just like sitting in the like lobby, and Trad Cotter came in because his flight was late, and I was like, dang, dude, like you're the whole reason I even came here, and like now like we're the only ones here, and you're just like trying to drink a beer, and like you're down to have a conversation. Like that was the vibe. Like he came in, I was like, yo, I'm gonna keep it real. I know you. I'm here to like meet you, and he's like, all right, let's have a conversation. He's like, my flight was late. I don't have nothing else to do. Like so we just like sat down and shot the shit, and like I took his classes, and then after that, his wife started following me online, and that changed my shit up because like they were doing. He still does speaker organization for the Telluride Mushroom Festival, and like even though I was like low key back then, I was already doing shit that nobody's seen before, but nobody knew what I was doing because I was just like just on like in my little corner of the internet. But as soon as his wife saw what I was doing, they were like, oh shit, because I was already figuring out how to grow cordyceps mushrooms and shit back then. And like they're like, yo, this kid needs to talk at Telluride. So as soon as I talked like at Telluride the next year after I met him, they invited me to talk at Telluride, and then people took me seriously, and my whole everything changed.
What a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing. And I just want to point this out because we've all been taught or programmed to believe that there's only one way, which is this kind of pseudo traditional way that we've all seen doesn't quite work for everybody. Like you go to college, you get a job, you blah, blah, and it's not a fit for everybody. And, for some people, if that's your way, that's your way. But there's always another way to do everything in the world. And I actually believe more and more people are waking up to this, to really sense what's living inside of them. I mean, this is essentially what I do with my business is I help people find their heart, find their passion, and then step into it. And for some people, it's scary as shit. And for some people like you, it's like, it was just, you followed it and it was natural. And yeah, it was definitely challenging. But you're showing it's like you were hungry and you went after it and you made it happen. And now look. So let's talk about what you are up to now, so then we can kind of segue into what's happening on a larger scale in this world of mushrooms and plants and cannabis and all the realms that you're stepping into. Everything's growing exponentially fast, and not just in the psychedelic world, but also in the medicinal mushroom world, and the awareness and the acceptance of even my mom. This is how I always gauge everything. I'm like, now my mom is actually open to mushrooms. When many years ago, she thought I was just the crazy one. But now it's like, if I can send it to her on Amazon, then I guess she thinks it's okay. But which sadly, but let's talk about this. What is it that you're up to, right now? Like, what do you have going on? I mean, it sounds like a little of everything. And, like, how do you put yourself out there, and what is it that your intentions are right now with your business?
Right on. Yeah, so I'm working just on fine-tuning MycoSymbiotics in the sustainability factor, and in the autonomy factor. So like, I'm working on making my business autonomous and more sustainable so that I can step away from it a little bit more. In my business, in the sense of the mushroom production and events. Um, I've created a good system and formula for, the mushroom farm, and for putting out these events, and for the products and that we put out, and the events that we engage with. So over the past 2 years, I've been working with our operations manager, who I've trained up, and is transitioning into becoming my personal. Mm, I don't want to say, like, I don't know what's the best way to describe what she does, because like it's a big role. Like, she's like my brain,
Like your
my
clone.
co-brain. Yeah,
Yeah.
not for real though. Like, because she knows how to do the things that I like, so I don't have to do it. Like, so that I can do other things that I'm good at, that made me be valuable to begin with. Like, my value is my talents. My value is the things that I can do that no one else can do. My value is the things that I can think that no AI can think. My value is the things that I can make that no robot can make. So like, that's what I need to be doing over anything. Besides, once you create a system and you're doing it over and over and over again, that's robotic. That's the definition of robotic. So like, I should be making fresh systems, and like staying in alignment with where I'm most valued. So that's not always something easy to do. For the past 2 years, I've just been working with her, to take over a lot of the operations of the things that I know how to do, and engagement with the public. So she's taken over full on of my like interactions with the public, so that I have a buffer to make sure that the engagements that actually make it to me are worthwhile, because my attention's already split. So outside of business, my attention belongs to my family. So if you're not going to come correct, then you're not ever going to make it past Leslie. So that's the way that it goes. So then I got Justin, who's been working with us now for 2 years, who he's in the community. He's been a good friend of mine for a long time. Started a mushroom business, did mushroom extraction and all this kind of things, and is really good at growing mushrooms and doing mushroom extraction. But the business end of it wasn't his forte. So we joined forces, and he became production manager of MycoSymbiotics, and now he can do the things that he's really great at, and run the mushroom farm for us. We merged. We've been able to, like, he's still able to, do business with his accounts and everything like that through us, so we're all community vibed out. And then we got our graphics designer, content creative manager, that's taken the lead on, like, just making how to present me to the world, making sure that we're presenting me to the world in a very clean way, like putting out good content, educational content, interacting with different brands that are working with, like, podcasts, films, and things like that we're making. And like, my big emphasis is, like, for me now, is like focusing on ecological research. I really enjoy spending my time studying the environment very intimately, Like I like to look at these different organisms. I like to bring them into the lab, study them in the lab, see what they're producing, see what their interactions is with the other organisms, because nothing is surface, nothing exists on its own. Everything has these interactions. We're missing a lot of pieces of our environment, but we can study them through the pieces that we have left. So I like to spend a lot of my time studying these different pieces. I created a whole laboratory here for studying nature, microscopes, DNA sequencing, culturing for fungi, plants, algae, and then also extraction. And we're working with chemical analysts, so we can do analytical chemistry on some of the things that we're working on, with a big focus on like bringing new foods and medicines into agriculture, like not just mushrooms, but like algae, plants, other things. I haven't really gotten into plants too much, but mostly just mushrooms and algae, also insects. But doing whatever is aligned with what we're working on. So like it may seem like a lot, but like just like I said, nothing exists on its own. So like when I'm working with the mushrooms, oh, then I need the bugs to do this part of the ecological process, or I need the algae for like this gas exchange thing, or like because that's how it works in nature. Otherwise, then you're relying on a bunch of like burning coal to use electricity to fill some part of a system that was supposed to be some other thing in the wild. So like so um we can we're just working on studying, and like I've really built a business that allows me the time and space to study nature in the ways that I like to, and move around the country where the different organisms are growing when they're growing, and be there with them. um yeah uh and teach more people. Like when we figure out how to grow something new, when we figure out a new and something novel, we're always teaching. We're teaching people how to grow mushrooms like 4 times a year. We're doing intensive mushroom cultivation classes, intensive cordyceps cultivation classes. It's like a mushroom that I was one of the first people in any English speaking country to figure out how to grow it. So we've been teaching people how to grow it since 2015. It sells at $600 to $1,200 a pound dry, so that's even more than cannabis in a lot of places. So it's really good money for people. And yeah, we're just about to do our first permaculture design course in Puerto Rico. I'm Puerto Rican. Um, my father was the last born there before coming to the U.S., but I'm of Puerto Rican descent, and we've been going back there for like going on 3 years now to know the island, understand its needs, and fulfill them. So we're coming back with a permaculture design course led by mostly Puerto Ricans. And Yeah, it's going to be 10 days teaching people about ecological literacy and whole system design science. So yeah, just really providing people with the tools to create regenerative industry, ecologically regenerative industry, in opposition to the antibiotic industry that we rely on, that we were born into for like getting our clothes and our food and providing us social systems. They suck. So somebody's got to make something new. So I'm trying to train people how to make something new.
Beautiful. And I do want to point out, because I've seen so many people struggle with this. It's kind of the growing pains of expansion in your purpose and what you're here to do, because it's part of human nature and part of nature in itself to constantly be expanding. But if we don't let go and, give over some of the work so that we can be in our zone of genius, like you're talking about, this is where it's like innovation will be stifled, because you have to be able to keep going and expand and innovate while, keep running it. So sometimes it does mean letting go. And I've seen a lot of clients, including myself, struggle with that, where it's like, well, the only way to help more people, or the only way to expand into new areas, is to hand off a lot of the work to others, which, by the way, also empowers others. It gives people jobs. It's, a way of creating a whole system that hopefully works. Now, it's been interesting to watch the explosion in, just this world of, let's say, psychedelics or mushrooms or plants or cannabis. But there's also, some potential, let's say, dark sides. For example, there's a lot of concern over patenting strains of psilocybin, or concerns over, big pharma or other similar companies regulating what we're all trying to create, this world of cognitive liberty, or just collective liberation in general. But then there's still a lot of this kind of what I would call like the old systems that I personally think are quite broken, coming in and, you know, trying to colonize and take over and regulate. How do you feel about this? I mean, do you have an opinion? And I'm sure you've seen this, or maybe you have a totally different opinion, but is this something that people should actually be concerned about? Because, you know, being in the psychedelic world, there's a big concern over, yes, legalization being freedom, but also being more regulated.
Yeah, there's a lot to, that's a jam-packed situation right there. So, um, one, antibiopiracy. So we were down with Entheum Foundation in Oaxaca in November, doing genomic studies of psilocybin mushrooms used by the Zapotec people around San Jose del Pacifico. Um, See, when we do this, and also when we empower people in their lands, because DNA barcoding and sequencing is now portable, and if you can follow a recipe, you can do DNA barcoding, which is all that is needed to take your medicine and have the exact DNA code that says that that's your medicine, unpatentable by any fuck that comes with their mission from the Vatican that allows you to employ your politics over indigenous peoples. That bullshit. That's wild. So when we have the DNA sequence, that's ours. That says that's ours. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever plants you have, whatever knowledge you brought, get those DNA barcodes and hold those things tight to you, because that's what you take to the courts when somebody tries to patent what's yours. So that's what I've been working on telling more indigenous peoples. I'm talking to the indigenous peoples right now, that's being encroached upon for their intellectual properties and their natural properties that they've developed over generations of being intentional consciousness. So aside from that, um, this is not all right. So like psychedelic legalization, like this is a big. This wasn't just like, oh, like the people are becoming empowered and interested in psychedelics, and now they're getting into. There was MK Ultra. There was all sorts of psychedelic studies by the CIA, by the U.S. Army, by all of them before they even made it illegal the first time in the 50s, in the 60s. So like this was a big. They did the research that they wanted to know before they made this allowed for the public. The government is what I'm talking about. The government and all the other private entities that fund it. They did their research first. So like all this stuff that's rolling out and we think that like, oh, like the psychedelic, this and that. They already studied the whole thing. So like for me, it's like a really interesting juxtaposition, because I feel like to some extent I'm watching a narrative unfold, because for those big corporations that are the culture vultures, that are the venture capitalists that are moving their funds out and into the whatever's trending for the moment, if you go into their boardroom meetings, they're talking about 10, 20, 30-year plans. Some of these people have plans for what they're going to be doing in 2060 with the money that they're already made off of this psychedelic movement. So like for me, it's like keep it real, keep it in the moment. Practice civil disobedience, because fuck the government, because fuck the corporations. Also because if you are in the U.S., we do have the opportunities to like do something about this. Like we live in the land of the free, and all it takes is to be rich, literally, and money ain't shit. Like all these old fucks, they come to me with their dead money that they got from using my slave ancestors that doesn't work anymore, and they're like, "Oh, you're alive. Young black guy with ideas, young diverse person with ideas. You're alive and creative. Let me give you let me look at all the things you can do with this money. I have this money and I can make your ideas real and blah, blah, blah." I'm like, fuck you. All you got is money, and that's just dead, and that didn't even have any value to begin with. Only thing that I value, clean water, good food, space for my friends and family to be together. That's what I'm saying. So the more people that know that that's what's valuable and not that money, because that's an illusion and they're trying to give you this illusory, ooh, look at the money, da 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 da. Nah, where's the clean water? Where's the good food? And where's the space and time for my family and friends to enjoy our time in this life together? Because that's the only thing that's valuable. So like once we start to like reevaluate this, then the illusion starts to fade. Whatever power that they have starts to fade. All that shit goes away, and this is the moment where I think that this is what's important about psychedelics right now. Not the money, not the legality, not whatever. What's important about psychedelics right now is that a bunch of people are about to try them. A bunch of people are about to experience nature relatedness, and there's a whole bunch of content now that they can interact with on the internet. And we're in this unique position, right, where a lot of people are talking about like, how do we integrate from this psychedelics? Because a lot of people are getting tripped out. A lot of people are tripping now because it's like in the news, it's in the media, everybody's talking about it. You can get it in the mail, you can get it over here, you can get it over there. And so like people are going to trip out and they're going to want to know what's next, right? We get to decide what's next by reevaluating what our wealth is, what we find valuable, because this is the biggest time where we can redefine what's valuable. And I think that lies in the individuals in their reconnection to nature. I think that lies in the individual in understanding what they value, so that we can transition away from these old decrepit value systems that are destroying our planet. Because like those 2060 plans or whatever that these people have, it's an illusion based on the fact that whatever they think is valuable is going to be valuable. But no more. So like for me, I just think it's like a time for a revolution. It's an opportunity for people to like really take their power back, make decisions that is for them. You know, wake up in the morning and like think about every decision that they're making is are you making some rich person richer, or are you working for your family, for your community? What are you doing? Like, what are you doing with your energy? Are you feeding something else, or are you feeding your soul?
I'm sitting here like I could break out hysterically crying right now because so this is a conversation I'm actually here in Costa Rica right now, with a community that is trying to, you know, a permaculture community that's trying to create like, how do we create this community? And I sat down with my friend who's kind of the head honcho who's developing this, because that's his background. And I said, look, all I care about is water and the earth, like, and community. You know, it's like, what is this all here for? I mean, and I say this to my clients all the time. You know, it's like my client announced, I just fell in love with someone. And I said, well, that's the alignment. Yes, it's great to have clients. Yes, it's great to make money. Yes, it's great to make change on planet Earth. But really, what truly matters? And this is exactly, I am so glad you say this, because this is really like my biggest prayer for this whole growth in psychedelics. It's definitely been weird being in this kind of psychedelic world, which I've been on this path for 35 years, and it kind of just kept coming through me. Like, I didn't even ask to be on this. I'm like, it just kind of kept coming to me, and I said yes. And there's definitely been some concerns. You know, there's been concerns around, because trust me, I probably a lot like you probably get it way more than me. I get people contacting me all the time with money, and they feel like money talks, but it's like, well, wait a second. What is your intention behind this? Mm-hmm. You know, and also my prayer is that these medicines are waking us up to the ways, which by the way are ancient ways, that is literally the source. And I've said this on almost every interview I've done for years and years. The source of the depression and anxiety that so many, let's say Westerners, Americans, you know, in particular, are feeling and turning to psychedelics to cure, to fix, it's like, well, what's at the root cause of that depression, anxiety? You know, maybe it is this systematic issue where it's like everybody's trying to keep up with the Joneses and be a slave to the system and make money. And, you know, and maybe we've just gotten it all wrong. So it's kind of this spiral of like, well, maybe these medicines will wake you up to what's real, which is that connection that you mentioned, which is literally what's causing the anxiety and depression in the first place. It's like this. Yeah. And it's so simple. It's right in front. It's right in front of us every day. Mm-hmm. Aho to what you just said. And I do believe that this is, this is like the kind of work I do is really about people having these mission centered businesses where, yes, you're here to help, most of my clients are helping people transform. And what do you stand for in the world? What's your larger vision? And I'm curious, you just said a lot that it really aligns with a huge part of my own mission and my own values. I'm curious, how is your mission built into your business? And do you have kind of a long-term vision for what you want to bring to the world with the work that you're doing out there?
Yeah, 100%. So, our business is making better air quality in central Pennsylvania by reducing the amount of methane production that's happening here in measurable tons, by removing biological waste from the waste stream. So we utilize Trogs Brewery grain fines. So Trogs is a big brewery here in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and we take their grain fines and incorporate them into our farm here. So they're not going into any waste stream where they may be producing methane. Same with a lot of local coffee grounds and sawdust. So we're making sure that it's controlled composted by our mushrooms, and then we have it in compost out in the garden. So since November, we moved our farm to old Catholic high school that's being converted into an eco village in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is the capital here. And the football field bleachers have already been turned out into gardens, and next to the bleachers are also turned out into gardens. So, and we have compost systems set up out there. So we're going to be amplifying on the composting there, and we've developed techniques for using Cinia fetida worms to decompose our mushroom substrates for plants. So we're sinking carbon. We're pulling organic waste out of the waste stream so that it's not producing methane, and producing organic soil, fertilizers, nutrient amendments, compost teas. So good for the air, good for the soil. And then, just trying to make more jobs for more people where they can spend their time doing something that's not actively making the world a worse place. So there's a lot of warehouses out here, because Pennsylvania touches more states than any other state. 40% of the U.S. population lives within a day's drive of where we live, and all of the highways connect where we live in the center of Pennsylvania. So there's a lot of commerce here. There's a lot of trucks that go through here, and warehouses that move stuff out to be shipped to different places. So whenever any of my friends are working a full-time job at Amazon, they're spending 40 hours a week destroying the planet because Amazon is antibiotic. So I'd rather them be able to spend 40 hours a week, like cleaning up soil, collecting compost, doing things that actively makes our place a better place to live. And hosting events to teach people how to do these things. So like, that's a really big emphasis of it, is like, a lot of people don't believe things that they can't interact with. They don't believe things that they can't touch. People say, oh, that's just fantasy. Like, oh, like we can all live eco-friendly lives. And, like when I told people I want to grow mushrooms for a living out here where I'm from 10 years ago, they say, oh, you're fantasy, oh, da, 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 da. Like, that's the type mindset. That's what I'm saying. So like, I know that a beautiful world is possible. I know that we don't need fuel, these fossil fuels. I know that we don't need harmful chemicals. I know that we don't need petroleum plastics. I know that we don't need cell phones. I know that we can be telepathic. I know that we can really be intimate and connect with the wild lands and be one with each other again. I know it. And because I know it, I hold that reality with me until more people can actualize it themselves. So like, people are like, oh no, you can't, like, we're never going to be able to live in a world where we don't use money. Man, I know we can live in a world where we don't use money. I already see it. I already have the plan. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, the more that we can make that tangible, because in my reality, it's not just fantasy. I'm not just saying that like I'm wishful thinking. I've been places in the world where I've seen every part of this system working individually. I've seen somebody doing a little bit of the most beautiful thing here, a little bit of the most beautiful thing there. And I'm just like, why haven't we brought this together as a society to where we can all just enjoy this abundance together? Why do I got to go to California to enjoy this? Why do I got to go to Colorado to enjoy that? Why do I got to go to New York? Why? Whenever we're a global system, like, we have the internet, you know what I mean? So I'm just like, use these things to our advantage. Let's not be like the thing that happens in the US is we have boardrooms of highly trained college graduates that have been trained to market to our most innate desires, and people have become impulse zombies in a colonial zombie culture to begin with. Most people don't think to much capacity, so we have to create these realities. It's hard for you to like be able to see. I'm speaking from my own. I'm not talking about nobody like trying to be offensive. When I was 18 years old, I had to pull my mind away from, fast cars, Nike shoes, all that kind of stuff. I had to pull my fucking soul away from it. Like I was like, get off of me, like you yanking it off in my trips, like fucking ripping the shit off. Like it was hard. It was hard to get. They had occupancy in my mind because as a child I was getting their programming of highly trained people advertising me stuff to sell me for the rest of my life. People have to understand that this is what they've been subjected to in a free nation. In a free country, when you walk outside, if you don't know what your kids experience, if you don't 100% know, you bought the apps on your kid's phone, not free apps. You bought the apps on your kid's phone, you pay for them to go to school. Unless you fully know what your kid's getting into, somebody is putting something in their head. And then they're probably going to be the one that has to find it later. So like that's the reality of it. I had to do it for myself. So it's hard to be able to like notice these things and engage with these things. We have to create more space where it's just like, I've been in some states that they're not allowed to have billboards. We have billboards everywhere here in Pennsylvania. Some states you're not allowed to have billboards off the side of the road. But like people don't realize how heavily advertised we are. It's adverting your attention. That's literally what the word means. It's adverting you from your own experience to go feed somebody else because they paid millions. So they're going to definitely make sure that by putting that thing up there that it gets into your mind by using tantalizing. The right color makes the human feel this, and the right noise makes that's what they're doing. That's literally what they've studied. They're throwing the perfect color and the perfect sound to make you hungry for their thing or want their clothes or whatever. That shit, I hate that shit. Like I want to be the least amount of that with my business. But just to end it, I don't want to keep ranting. My whole thing is just like leading people towards other options and making it really real for them, like showing somebody that they're making a whole living off of it. Like, oh, you didn't think that was possible? I brought this person to my festival that their whole living is that thing that you thought was fantasy. So like, let's really get with it. Let's really make a more beautiful tomorrow together. Let's conceptualize this. We're building it. We're training the people to engage with the technical skills necessary to rely on themselves and become dependent producers instead of independent consumers, because our society produces dependent consumers. Our society relies on dependent consumerism to fuel the mega wealthy people that make the decisions in our planet. So that's what I keep saying. Like, we have the opportunity to redefine what wealth is. Like, we don't have to keep funding this. We can say that this is not what's wealthy. We're going to do something different. So like, that's where I'm at. I'm going to leave it at that.
Aho. And I will add two more things. Fear-based marketing, because it's all the same, right? Desire-based, fear-based marketing. And then also, we might have a day sooner versus later where we're going to have to do this. Like, I've been saying this for years. I'm like, we don't know if money is going to exist. We don't know if it will be what it is today. I think the powers that be want to keep growing and growing and growing and growing. But at the same time, we're seeing a lot of change in the world, and we don't know where it's going to go. And there is this, there are certain humans on this planet that have an awareness that this is not working and the systems are possibly going to collapse. So we might actually need to implement, permaculture systems and regenerative business and regenerative everything in order to survive as a species. And I think at some level, a lot of us really know this deep in our bones that this is not working. I mean, especially since COVID, people are saying, like, something's happening. There's a change. Like, I'm sick of being stuck in that cycle. And I think it did wake up a lot of people to say, you know what, maybe I should do things a little differently.
I'm telling you, this is where like all of our anxieties and depressions and everything are rooted from our disconnect. Like 100%. Like, it's like I'm selling people bottles of nature. Like, I'm literally selling people bottled nature because the more you disconnect from the and I'm trying to figure out the best ways to define it, and I'm doing it in the moment. But the more you disconnect from the nature of the biological world, the more ailments that come, the more cancers. Like I often ask people, like, how many generations ago was your family eating off the land that they lived on? How many generations ago did you start wearing shoes? Those things start to really define how domesticated you've become. And the more domesticated you become, then there's cancers, anxieties, all these things. People need pills just to be regular and da 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 da, and like whatever. So like for me, I'm just like, yo, let's just rewild.
Yep.
Like, yeah, like reconnect, regenerate, rebel from the culture of hate. That's the energy.
This is all it seems to come down to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm curious, when looking at the bigger picture of what's happening in the world of, let's say, the mushroom world. Like, I personally am shown an ad on Instagram for a new mushroom drink, like quite literally every week. I can't even keep up with the amount of mushroom brands and mushroom, supplements and mushroom gummies, and not just psychedelic. Obviously, it's like medicinal mushrooms. Do you feel like this is a good thing? Like maybe it is waking something up in people to return back to nature and get away from, whatever they were trying before, and maybe, reishi instead of Xanax, or, whatever it is. Do you feel like the world is heading in a positive direction as it comes to, all the plant-based supplement companies and freaking like the mud waters of the world, like, and now there's, a dime a dozen. What do you think of all this? And is this something that's maybe leading us in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's trendy capitalism, but it's definitely like it's putting more of the language into the populace. Like more people are interacting with these things and know about them. It's developing consumer education. The more people know about these things, the more they'll be able to interact with them, right? So like if you've never had cordyceps before, you won't know how it's going to make you feel. But like I really value when somebody says, "Hey, I've tried a lot of mushroom products, but yours really makes me like I really feel like that's where we're getting at, because like before there wasn't even any of this stuff for people to even interact with. Like people couldn't find cordyceps or reishi or whatever. I'm not I can't speak on the quality because like all these things that are just popping up from the vulture capitalists, the venture capitalists, whatever that come in. 80% of the world's mushrooms are produced in China. We don't have enough domestic supply to supply everything that's popping up right now. So there's a lot of Chinese mushroom powders in these companies. There's a lot of white labeling and co-packing that's going on. So a lot of these companies have never interacted with the product. If you don't know what white labeling or co-packing is, just look it up. But most people never even touch their product, don't even know what's in their product. If you ask them, that's where I have an issue. But it builds more consumer awareness, so people can start asking like the company, like, hey, in the question box on the website, like, where were your mushrooms grown? Like, just start there, because you want to just like know where it comes from. Like what I hope happens, because like it happened to me, like when I ate psychedelic mushrooms, I really wanted to know where everything came from that I was eating and like watching on TV or anything. I'm like, yo, who produced this? Like, who directed this? Like, what was their intentions? Like, where did this clothes come from? Did a child slave away to make this so I can look fresh? Like, I'm just like, I couldn't. I just like, I'm like, yo, I have to know. I'm like, yo, where did this food come from? Did some like South American laborer like not get a fair wage so that I could eat this piece of food? Like, no, I cannot. Like, so I'm just like, I want more people to like want to know how their life is impacting the world. And I don't think it's too big of a stretch to like be thinking about all of these things when like you could just buy local for most of the things that we're interacting with to begin with. So like that way you can really know, like the guy can tell you like, oh yeah, I bought this yarn from a small producer that has alpacas 10 miles away, or like I got this cotton from Amazon. So I don't know. Like you can ask these questions and start to become literate about it. Like we lived in the best moment in time for people to become educated. Like They gave the phone literally to people that's like in the bush. Like, I'm not even kidding you. Like people in the bush, everybody got an iPhone in their hands. Everyone, it don't matter how poor or rich, whatever. Everybody got iPhone in their hands. They gave iPhone to the people in the bush. They're like, yo, I got this magic box in my hand. They didn't even learn about coding or most people in the US don't even know. Like, if you would have been back to the 60s, people know what's like alternating current, direct current. They know that the frequencies come into their radio, and like people are like, oh, Doodle Bob comes on the magic box screen. Like, you know what I mean? But like the fact that people have this accessible to them means that we can educate a lot of people really quickly. So like I'm just like, yo, take advantage of what the technocrats have released out into the world and use it to our advantage instead of just like becoming like subject to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, zombies. And I'm so glad you brought up about knowing where, like where it's grown, who grew it. And not only that, being in the psychedelic world, especially as more, synthetic psilocybin and ayahuasca chocolates and God knows what else people are putting out there these days. I'm a very big believer in like, this is actually all spirit. And we have to actually come back to this place of, I know who specifically grows every mushroom I touch, where it's grown, if it was grown under natural light or artificial light, what the intention was. Some of the people I get it from, like, will literally pray and play music with it. And it does make a difference. And I keep saying I hope that, especially in the medicine world, that is the next phase of, okay, it's not just go take mushrooms with some random space holder or therapist or whatever, but it's really connecting with everything that has come to you to grow this and to give it to you as a sacred, as a sacrament, and to really tap into the subtle energies of these plants, because whether they're psychedelic or not, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's like you can drink water with an intention, and it's much more healing than just pounding water and not even thinking about it. And I think, again, this comes back to this massive disconnection that humans have with, our nature, which is, earth, sun, prana, everything that's here literally keeping us alive, and the spirit of the plants, of everything around us, and that deeper level connection, which, by the way, connects back to the root of all the systematic problems on the planet. So it's like, it's all so simple. But yet seems to be so hard for so many.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Go on.
No, I was just thinking about what you were saying about the intentions or around what we're consuming matters, because a lot of people ask me about synthetic psychedelics versus like naturally grown psychedelics, and like I'm a proponent for synthetic psychedelics when it comes to like ecological conservancy, with the toads and with the cacti, but there's also there's a whole line of thought where scientists are like, well, 1,000 milligrams of psilocybin will do this, and like it doesn't matter if it comes from a mushroom or if it's synthesized, it will do this. But like then you're tripping and you're just like, yo, where did this thing come from that I just like? That's that's when it becomes you know what I mean? So it I'm it's interesting to be a scientist and also to believe in magic, right? Because like there's like I believe in putting intention in the water, but like then on the science end of it, it's lacking there's no way in my science to know that this is what you say it is, but like there's other ways of knowing things. So I just like to highlight that like even though we live in this world of like where people like it's like scientism, like there's an ism to it, like people are like following like science like it's a religion. They're like, oh well, trust the science. I'm like, you don't even fucking know science. Like, when did you do the scientific method? Like, where did you go practice science? You know what I mean? Like, but they're like, oh, trust the science, and I'm just like, that's just as much as saying like, what would Jesus do, and then doing something you shouldn't do. You know what I mean? Like, because like you believe that if you're not part of the Catholic Church, then you're gonna go to hell or some shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so like I don't think that it's like good to use stuff like that to justify anything, or to be like, this is like all that is, like science says, like, because like I'm gonna just throw it out there. Facts can be proven wrong. So I base my life on intuition, because there's been multiple times where modern science says something that we thought was a fact is not actually how it actually is. So like, I base my life on intuition. I'm gonna just leave it at that.
Yeah, and we can't limit ourselves to this box of programming, or else we are never going to, we're just going to be stuck in the same cycle over and over and over. And this is like, okay, and this is like the work of Charles Eisenstein, and speaking about this more beautiful world that we're all here, hopefully most of us want to.
That's the homie.
Yeah. Oh, isn't he great?
That's the homie. He's from Harrisburg.
Oh, he is? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's a big reason why I'm like that's a big reason why there was people like talking that talk whenever I was younger, that like I could go interact and learn permaculture. Like he was out here, he doing lectures and stuff. He wrote those books out here, like Ascent of Humanity, Sacred Economics, and he was like teaching people that was like 20 years older than me, and they were doing like permaculture in their backyard and stuff, holding space for people to learn different things. When I was younger, like that community isn't like it used to be, but like it was there for me when I needed it. And Charles really had a big impact on my life, because like I like went house sitting for him in Asheville whenever him and his family moved down to Asheville, North Carolina. And like then I started my first cordyceps farm in Weaverville, North Carolina, like shortly after that, like because I didn't know that there was a place on the East Coast where people like already knew, where the consumers or the customers engaging with the business already knew about it. Like I didn't have to go teach, this is a cordyceps mushroom, this is a reishi, this is like anywhere else I had to teach about it. In Asheville, they already knew about it. Otherwise, I would have to go to like Oregon or Colorado or something like that.
Amazing. Yeah, incredible. Well, one last question before we go. Well, two. One, if you had to choose one mushroom for the rest of your entire life, like let's say you were stuck on a little island alone for the rest of your life, what mushroom would you want with you?
Shoo. Stuck alone on an island for the rest of my life with one mushroom. Well, because I probably would pick an oyster mushroom, because it's really, really easy to grow them and they taste good. And I know I'll be always able to keep it growing easy. Like other mushrooms, like more technical to grow. I would need more like energy, tools, or things like this to make it work. But if I had a whole life on an island, I could figure out how to set up a molecular biology lab from materials that I could forage from nature within a couple years, I'm sure. And then work on breeding a micro and molecular biology lab, and work on breeding the oyster mushrooms to do different things besides just be food. Because I would want other mushrooms for other reasons, but they're not as easy to grow as the oyster mushroom is. The oyster mushroom already can grow on a lot of different materials. It can produce fruiting bodies in a lot of different weather. So I'm just like, all right, I'll just work with you and then train you to do other things that I want over my lifetime, versus grabbing other mushrooms that I want that may be harder to grow.
Amazing. Beautiful answer. And then I want to leave you an opportunity to promote anything you have coming up. If there's any workshops or things coming out in the next, few months that you want people to know about. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We have Earth Day Fest coming up, Earth Day weekend, April, here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It's going to be a 2-day festival. Educators, speaking about working with the earth, composting, doing agriculture, foraging. We're going to be building a mushroom hut. We're going to have live music. It's going to be a lot of fun. Vendors, food, camping. So if you're coming from out of town, and then we have our 10-day permaculture class next month in March 10th to the 19th in Puerto Rico. It's going to be in Ajuntas, Puerto Rico. We have a beautiful campground. We have transportation from San Juan to Ajuntas. We have a van to take people on field trips during the event. We have lots of guest speakers. We're going to be teaching everybody in there. We'll leave with a permaculture design certificate. and if they pass. We have MycoFest coming up first weekend in August, like always. We're about to release early bird tickets for that. And just check out MycoSymbiotics.com because you can join our email list. We have lots of classes coming out all the time. Um, yeah. I think just check out MycoSymbiotics.com. Tap in with some of our events. And follow me on Instagram at MycoSymbiote. I'll probably be in a city near you sometime soon.
Awesome. Well, we'll have all your links right here in the show notes and on YouTube, and definitely, check them out, subscribe to the email list, and I'm happy to also share any events to my community that especially being in the tri-state area. William, this was an amazing conversation. I'm so glad we finally got to connect. I was like watching you for a few years, and I'm like, one day I want to interview him. So thank you so much for
Well,
your
let's
time.
grow.
Yeah, and thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
This world needs you and needs your voice more than ever. So keep going, keep speaking up. Thank you so much for this beautiful, sacred work you do for planet Earth.
Bless I. Thank you for giving me a platform. It means the world. And I just want to let everybody know that the world needs you just as much as it needs me. It's all our opportunity to do something this time. So let's enjoy this moment that we have together, alive on this earth when we can understand each other. Let's grow.
Aho.